beach vending season. So a few introductions before we get started. This is Jeff McVeigh, our lead code enforcement officer. John Callens, beach ambassador. Josh Irvin, beach maintenance director. Jay Tusa, executive director of Visit South Walton. Wayne Dice, our planning director. Our permitting clerks over here, Amy and Rosanna, and Lisa Foster, our secretary down at Visit South Walton. Captain Addie Riles in in the audience today. So anyway, appreciate everybody's time. The purpose of this meeting is to take input from all the people that either participate or are affected by beach vending. If you have any other issues that are beach related, I'd appreciate if you hold them to our September 21st meeting. We have another open public meeting, starts at 5 o'clock or 5:30. If you'll check our website, it has more information about it. But that's more of a general beach operations meeting. This meeting is in particular about vending, the good, the bad, and how we can do things better.
We did 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock? Good. And I'm sorry, we got David Vaughn, South Walton Fire District, Captain Sammy Sanchez. Back in the back, incognito, is Harold Taunton Jr., Code Enforcement Officer, and Danny Garner, Code Enforcement Officer. We got a couple other ones that aren't here today. I'm sure you'll get to meet them in the future. Okay, a few statistics. Normally I'd have our what we call our annual activity report. I had a few compiling or compilation formatting problems. We started a new access-based data management system, and it's very good at collecting data. I had a few struggles with some of the reporting issues with it, but I'll email all that information to y'all later this week. If you're not on the beach vendors list, then pick up one of my cards, send me a quick email with a subject line that says, please send beach code enforcement activity report, and I'll have my secretary send it to you.
Brian, we just put our names on our emails on
this. Okay. That'll be good enough. We'll add that to the list of information distribution. I do have a few statistics. Last year we had about 3,500 contacts. Contact is where one of our code enforcement officers encounters a person. They have a couple of dispositions. We have about a dozen or so items we enforce that are contained in Chapter 22, which is the Waterways and Beaches Municipal Code. And in that, each one of those items has a couple of different dispositions: be in compliance, receive a verbal warning, a written warning, or a citation. Some of them have subcategories, like dogs, for instance. They have a couple of different categories that you may be out of compliance on. Like I said, that's a general beach question. Vendors have a couple of different items that would be a sub-item that may be in compliance, may have just received a verbal or written warning and or citation. And then, of course, if you have multiple encounters with code enforcement for the same offense, those tickets increase typically by $100 each. Some other tickets have different amounts, but in general, that's it. Of those 3,500 contacts, a little over half were vendor related. And of that, about 30% were in compliance. The rest of them received verbal or written warnings, and about 10% of those received citations. But all the information is contained in this activity report. And I also have a complaint log and what we call our wildlife lighting ordinance complaint log. Once again, not vendor related, but items that we take care of. Number of beach vending permits we issued last year, approximately 167. Some of those were multiple permits to one vendor. We had a total of 59 vendors. Comparing that to last year, we issued 142 permits for 60 vendors. So we had about the same amount of vendors on the beaches. We issued a few more permits. I attribute that to people getting more specific place permits for different pieces of private property. So, like I said, the purpose of this meeting is to take in input of how the beach vending season went. So it's the good, the bad, and how we could do better. And this meeting, as it's geared towards beach vendors, it's open forum meeting to the public. Can I get a show of hand of who all is a vendor in the audience today? Okay, Good. Appreciate it. So as we go through the meeting tonight, we have a microphone in the back, and what it is just to open forum. If you have a question, you can ask a question. I'll answer it the best I can. If I can't, I'll hand it off to somebody that can. And if we can't answer it, we'll take it down and we'll get back with you with the answer. If you have a comment, simple comment, stand up and say it. We're taking down all the questions and comments and answers we give, and the information that is gathered tonight, and also next Tuesday we have another meeting just like this one. It'll be at 9 a.m. next Tuesday. Along with the information that we gather at the September 21st meeting, will be compiled with our annual activity report, and then that's how we generate or compose what we feel would be recommendations for consideration by the BCC, first by the Tourist Development Council and then the BCC, as how to make things better on the beach. So as we go through tonight, remember that some of us may have different opinions. Appreciate it if everybody would respect everybody's different opinions. I'll mediate. I don't expect anybody to, get into an argument tonight with anybody else. So with that being said, Jeff, do you have anything to add?
I do not.
Okay. Well, we're going to open the discussion up. Go by a show of hands. Junior has a microphone. Even though the microphone doesn't project too much sound in here, it does pick up the sound on our recording system. We're being recorded video and audio, so people can look at this at a later time if they would choose to do so. One other thing I forgot to mention is if y'all can silence all your devices, we'd appreciate it. If you got to take a call, if you can get up and go outside, we'd also appreciate that. So this is your time as vendors to express, in the general public, express what you think is good or bad, or what we could do better, or how you'd like to see the beach managed differently. Yes, sir. Also, if you can state your name before you talk, we'd appreciate it.
I'm Field with Football 38. Just for the sake of conversation, can you talk about what was better this year and what was worse this year compared to last year, just so we know where the single hot spot is?
Sure. What worked good again this year was, of course, the regional beach accesses and the 50% vendor zones. As we know, the vendor zones restrict the vendor to 50% of the public beaches. The general public has 100% use of the beach. They worked out pretty well. We didn't have many what we call 50% violations. We had a few complaints, but they weren't where of anything of significance. The one item that did seem to come up a lot in the complaint area was what's referred to as ghost sets. Now, as we entered those into our system and investigated, we determined that a lot of those complaints were associated with neighborhood beach accesses that were adjacent to private property beach that had specific place permitted vendors. And those vendors are allowed to set up in accordance with the agreement they have with the property owner and with their specific place permit. So after going through and looking at it, we realized that there was somewhat of a lack of understanding on what an empty chair really meant. At some of the regional beach accesses, we did experience what we call ghost sets, but we understand the weekly rental, type of action, and that the rentee may not use that chair all day. So as we would encourage vendors to, self-regulate in that area, it would go a long way. We understand the operations of most delivery vendors who are the people that deliver or are vending at our public beach accesses. They put them out in the morning, take them up in the afternoon, and typically have a weekly rental basis. So the other areas were too close to the water's edge. We sort of understand that too. Everybody likes to be right up next to the water, doesn't want anybody to come set up in front of them. Sometimes that became a problem as tides changed. Low tide in the morning, high tide, at lunch or mid-afternoon. Some chairs would get, turned over by water, the ones that weren't being used. We did have some instances of leave no trace or sets being left out. Some of that we understand are people dragging, since you're allowed to store at the toe of the dune. We do understand that there's nighttime visitors that want to sit in a chair and they drag them out. Typically we can tell that, you see drag marks in the sand. There's usually not an umbrella that's drilled in. So we can discern between, what's truly a violation and what's not. Storage at the toe of the dune is, while acceptable in the ordinance, it does have some specific stipulations to it, the biggest one being that it's rented the next day. We did, just through regular daily observation, see a lot of equipment, especially towards the end of the season, stored, for multiple days. Once again, we understand that it can be explained off as rented by the week, but goes back to the our encouragement of self-regulation to, if you're not using equipment, get it off the beach. But so, Jeff, what other areas do we have? Any particular? We had towards the end of the year, we had some early setups. People not abiding by the turtle texting program, mainly on the east end of the beach.
So last year, kind of the tone of these meetings was that the system was broken and something needed to change. And it seems like, I'm not trying to marginalize these issues, but they don't seem like huge, we need to revamp the whole system. Is that accurate, or is there as much frustration this year with the vendor program as there was last year?
Well, as we're being more pushed into the public beaches, being kept out of what's being deemed as private beach, and the amount of vending equipment that is on the beach now, it's just heavily congested. So of course the complaints, once again, we about the same amount of complaints as we had last year, and the only difference would be last year I believe the dominant complaint was vending without written authorization from the upland property owner. So all those are associated with neighborhood beach accesses where people have filtered off to right or left outside the vendor zones. Some regional beach accesses where you filter off east and west, and get in front of private upland property. This year, by and large, it was ghost sets. People are learning, or not learning, but being more acceptable of setting up second, third, and fourth tier on the beach. Whereas the last couple of years, it seems that everybody, that's what I call the race to the water's edge in the morning. The vendors are there waiting for the turtle text. The 7-day visitor comes down Saturday, Sunday morning, goes out to the beach at 9. He can't get next to the water's edge. So on Monday, they're out there at 5 a.m. And but I think this year, obviously with more permits being written, more vendors on the beach, more chairs being set up by vendors, general public learned they had second and third tier seats. And they don't mind sitting second and third tier from the complaints or phone calls that I fielded, emails that I fielded. But they don't like set up behind empty chairs that go empty all day. And once again, I recognize that reason, why a chair may be empty as observed any time of the day. The rentee might not be there from 11 to 3, might not come at all that day because they went shopping, but you've rented it for the week. So to answer your question, is it a big deal? The general public has made it clear that the vendors are monopolizing the beach. So what we'd like to do is get harmony on the beach, and how do we do that? So, that's our goal as beach operations, beach code enforcement department, is how do we seek harmony on the beach? We recognize that that might be hard to get to, but we want to do whatever we can, and I believe that vendors using a self-regulation program of appropriate amounts of sets when they're needed, and if that means more help, getting them on and off the beach, maybe during the middle of the day, having an attendee close by that can service them, similar like they're serviced on a resort community, that we could get there. So, sir, do you have any comments? Yes, sir.
Just one.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
This is just a comment. I just wanted to say for us, this year seemed a lot smoother than last year. And a big part of that is just thanks to the code enforcement. And they were very fair. Just want to say thank you.
My name is Mike Nessett, and I live over at Fairway Villas. And our beach access is at Boone Allen's or Lake Causeway,
Yes, sir.
which goes right by the sky.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and everybody kind of knows what Mr. Biscay or Bill Hackmeyer is doing.
Yes, sir.
My problem is that we've talked to the beach vendor that has the contract with Biscay. And Bill Hackmeyer has told the beach vendor to put up chairs all along the front of the beach where our access is. And he pays for it or he gets comp, I don't know how he does it.
Mm-hmm.
The beach vendor said, I cannot afford not to put the chairs up, even though I know they're ghost chairs. But that's what Mr. Hackmeyer has said, and that's what we do.
Yes, sir.
So as, when my family comes down to visit, and I come down, I live in Atlanta, I've got a house down here, I can't go down to the beach unless I send my son down at 6 in the morning to put up chairs.
Yes, sir.
Now, we sat there, and there's all summer, when I'm down, those chairs sit empty. And to me, that is a problem. And it's a problem with the vendor. I mean, the vendor, I'm sorry if he's gonna lose the contract, but you should not be putting up ghost chairs on that 33-foot of little beach area that we have. You come out, and for some reason, in the law down here, it says that 33 feet, they can put it all the way across it. There is not that 50%, which I think they shouldn't even be allowed. If it's 33 feet or something like that, it's not going to cost them any money. I mean, those chairs aren't rented out.
I agree. The condition you've explained there has a few peculiarities to it. The Lake Causeway neighborhood beach access is one of the few accesses we have that's actually on an easement. So it's an easement across Vizcaya property. When they received their development order, part of it was an easement on each side for beach access. You're correct. The vendor should not be allowed to set up all the way across there. Since we don't own it, we received information from the legal department that we could not delineate that into a 50% vendor zone. When we first started the delineation, we had decided to do only the ones that had 100 foot or greater of public beach associated with them. We then later were, when the ordinance was passed in 2015, it was in May, it was passed in a way that said all neighborhood beach access is owned by the county that have public beach would be delineated into 50% zones. So since that one is on an easement, we don't actually own the property, we just enjoy an easement across it. So that's why that was not delineated. When I became aware of the big problem, your son contacted me, and it came down, and I felt that I had explained it to the vendor in such a way that he understood that he really needs to leave room for public access. In our code, we have some ambiguous statements of leaving room for public or the general public, leaving access aisles and all that. It doesn't give clear definitions as to what that means. So it's very hard for us to regulate it. And in those cases, we try to help the vendors understand that this is the appropriate thing to do within the ordinance. And if it gets too far out of bounds, then, we'll take some enforcement action where we can in accordance with the ordinance. The other dynamic down there is you have a person that is, vehemently trying to protect private property rights, and he understands where his property goes to. So I wish I had the easy solution to that, but I don't right now.
So actually, where does this property go?
It goes all the way over to the western property boundary, which will also be the eastern property boundary of the new house that's built there. So if you'd like,
House is on his property.
pardon me?
The new house next.
No, it goes over to what would be the eastern boundary of that property line. But I'll be glad to share the plat with you. I have Ryan's email address. I'll send it to you. And I don't know if this is going to help matter any, but we have another beach access we're putting in on the eastern side of Vizcaya. It's a NRDA, which is a FDEP. Some of the early restore money was identified back in 2012, and it's been going through the processes. We finally got all the permitting, and we're bidding it out, or the FDEP, we're bidding it out sometime in November. And then we'll try to get that constructed before spring break, probably happen before summer. Now, is that going to create a problem down there? I don't believe so. Yeah, that problem's gotten out of control, but the property owner, stays just within his boundaries to a certain extent. Please understand that we as code enforcement, can only address civil issues contained in Chapter 22. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Claire Kane, and I walk for the Turtle Walk every morning, or a good many mornings.
Yes, ma'am.
I walk from Seagrove 1 to Whiskey Bravo, and I used to walk from Whiskey Bravo to Grove Park.
Okay.
And I don't know all the vendors along the way, the neighborhood businesses, but I have to just say they've always been really sweet and really nice guys, and none of them have said early. I have no complaints.
Good.
So I just want to say, thanks for the people that are there. It's been really nice. My one thing, well, a couple of things I'd like to ask, and I know this maybe sounds trivial to you, but there are a lot of these little orange rubber bands I think they use to tie, I don't know, names or something on the chairs,
Mm-hmm.
and they get into the beach every morning, and I've picked up thousands of them. I wish I had a dime for every one I picked up.
Okay.
Anyway, I was wondering if whatever they're using to tie off that with, they're using it as little beach friendly instead of rubber bands.
Okay.
And also, I don't know how it goes about people renting chairs, how they call people or what, but there are a lot of holes, people digging. I know they're having a good time on the beach, but for the turtles, it would be nice, I guess, if the vendors in some way can convey to their customers, smooth the sand at the end of the day, pick up your trash.
Mhm.
If they're leaving beach towels, I never had to go buy another beach towel in my life, so that's fine. They don't believe stuff like Yeti ice chest, that's fine, I'll pick all that up, but like
Yeah.
their trash, plastic cups.
Yes, ma'am.
It would be nice if that was just pastime.
Okay.
Just pick up your stuff when you leave.
Right. As part of the permitted process, they're required to pick up where they vend. And by and large, most of them do a good job. Holes on the beach, there's unfortunately not an ordinance against digging a hole or leaving a hole. It's just good beach etiquette. So we, as beach operation, is working with our marketing department and PR department to come up with what we call beach etiquette signs that we're going to install at our regional beach accesses. We already have signs that list all of our ordinances, the rules and regulations of the beach, but we don't have signs that are just, nice, friendly, this is good beach etiquette. We had a beach management, I oversee a beach management committee meeting, meet twice or every other month, and this morning we had some good ideas on garbage collection. Our beach maintenance division, we pick up garbage, at our garbage collection stations, but we don't walk the flat portion of the beach to pick up garbage. We kind of expect people to get it off the beach up to our garbage collection stations. So we have some ideas of how we think we can facilitate that, getting garbage off the flat portion of the beach up to our garbage collection stations. And we'll be implementing that over this, off season and ready for the new season next year. So hopefully we can solve some of those problems you're talking about. Appreciate your input, though, on, positive input on vendors, doing what's right. By and large, on social media, people take a lot of knocks, and if you knew the amount of chairs and vendors that were out there, you could gain a better understanding that, all in all, it works fairly good. It's just we're suffering from congestion. Yes, sir.
Brian Pearson. I'm just curious, I wonder if there's any plan to address the problem. There's some beach homeowners, homeowners who own up to a private beach and have their own access because they're not in the vendor zone, they can't be in front of their house. Is there any chance that the county can address that?
Well,
Specifically down, the one I know is down Wall Street, there's about 4 or 5 houses like that where it was split up properly, or spaced out, but there's a couple houses that are just outside the vendor zones, and the customers are like, well, why can't I have it coming on my own?
Right.
Access straight from the house. Why do I have to be down,
Yep.
20, 30 yards down? Just if that's going to be addressed or something to look into.
Yep, we'll address it like we did the last couple of years. What you're describing is paragraph D8, which is a public beach that has private property landward of it. And there, paragraph D8 says in order to vend on that section of beach, you have to have upland properties written authorization. So we understand, and the Board of County Commissioners understand that creates a little bit of a conflict, or it does create a conflict, because you have some people that want vendors that don't have a vendor zone, and then you have other people that have a vendor zone that don't want vendors. Over the last 2 years, since we started the delineation of public beaches into vendor zones, on the public beaches, seaward of private property, we've had to move, relocate, and in some cases just completely omit the vendor zones. So as like last year, I'll come back this year with a request for consideration to do away with paragraph D8. Now, part of the problem that we have with that is D8 was inserted into the ordinance associated with the Western End Beach Renourishment Project. So that's why there's been some reluctance in the past to omit that. But if paragraph D8 would go away, then we could have vendor zones that worked. If people chose that wanted a vendor, they could it'd make it easier to move these vendor zones into a place where they would stay permanently. And
I've never really paid attention to that section.
Mhm.
Until this year, it was never a problem. So
Right.
Does that say that the upland property owner can give permission to set from a class on public?
the way the ordinance reads is that in order to vend on a public beach that is seaward of private property, and the private property's southern boundary, it says contiguous, meaning next to, you have to have the upland property's written authorization to vend on that beach. Now,
But can I vend if it's not in the vendor zone? So if I got that on I have a specific homeowner who we made it work this year, but really wants to be able to have his customers walk about 30 yards down. They really want to be able to walk right off the boardwalk.
right.
So if I have a letter from him and bring it with my, beginning of the year when I get my new permit and I put in my permit, will that give me the right to vend in front of
No, sir, if it's not a vendor zone, then that means no, you can't. So, like I say, those were the conflicts that were created when we did the 50% delineation of public beaches, is that we knew that there would be some people that did not want vendors. I also assumed that there would be some people that may want to use vendors that don't have a vendor zone right in front of their house. But the way it ought to be is on a public beach that the upland property owner doesn't have the ability to do that, unless the county commission chooses to do that. Right now, they have that right, and it was put in place for a particular reason. But I think as we progress through, time, and as we get more people here and more vendors on the beach and more need for a public beach, that needs to be reconsidered. But it is the Board of County Commissioners' decision on that. Yeah.
And on that, y'all quit moving my books, I'm tired of putting them back.
Hi, Lacey Meyer. First of all, I want to thank you, just say thank you to y'all. I tell you what, my men love you because they just sit there and wait till they get their little beat and they're off. And curious, did we, as far as compared to last year, did we have more people come or about the same?
Jay, we got our results back. I know we don't have year results, but by month, do we have a number of visitors to our beach?
I mean, we have our, we don't have the numbers yet, but I mean, just by bed tax collections,
Mhm.
we're actually probably a little flat, with our numbers. So I think our ADR's been up, so.
Yeah.
And what's so crazy is that we've got so many people coming here, and that's what's happening, is that we got,
Well,
people that, it's like kind of more in demand here.
yeah.
I've been doing this business since 1992, before Opal, then after Opal, when everything developed. There's a lot of people, and of course it's caused other problems, construction and all that, but, we have so many people that call up and go, oh my God, we need this and we need that, and, I had to buy more because it's
Mhm.
in demand. And I'm putting people in there, and, I don't have ghosts, I have noonday, we have people that
Mhm.
deal with, even, so, I was just curious because I love it. I love that people have discovered us and,
Mhm.
but a lot of us, the vendors here, I know there's so many people now, it's like, I had this thought, I said, oh, this is scary. Do we have enough beaches? Just to find the people.
Well,
Because they're.
I think the verdict's out on that.
And even people that live here,
Huh?
it's like, oh my God, and that's what's happening. I'm just seeing this,
Yeah.
so.
The beaches are heavily congested, and that's creating some of the problems we have right
And I
now.
think, what you did with the 50, we're trying to help, but, you're not gonna make everybody happy.
Right.
I mean, we could bend over for, we try to, but man, you have some people that are stuck on, just plain, so.
Oh yeah, people have enjoyed.
Happens.
Yeah, people have enjoyed the beaches of South Walton in a certain way for a long time, and that's slowly changing. It's a cultural change. Like I say, in Okaloosa County, if you see pictures down there, they don't mind setting up 3rd, 4th tiers on the beach. I mean, they'll stack them all the way to the toe of the dune, and everybody seems to be happy. But here, everybody wants to be at the water's edge, and do not want to sit behind empty chairs. And I understand that, but there also needs to be an understanding by the general visitor to the beach that our beaches are congested. They're not as wide as they used to be 5, certainly not 10 years ago, and certainly not, pre-Opal. So as we all come to the beach, we got to learn how to enjoy them together.
I also want to thank the deputies, code enforcement, good job, good job. We had a few kind of little violence this year too.
Mm-hmm.
And our deputies and code enforcement, with Johnny on the spot, and I wanted to just say personally thank you for helping.
Good.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Lacey.
Robert Morales. First off, I want to say that the Sea Turtle program this year has been great. They've been clearing beaches very early, cooperative, and it's been awesome. We run a stretch on Eastern Lake Road, and one of the problems that we actually had was what you mentioned as far as the public coming down. We wait patiently, and the Sea Turtle, they're out there early, and they really help us out. But I mean, I'm not even exaggerating. We have people coming down with 10 canopies and setting them up at 4:30 in the morning.
Yep.
And I mean, this year for the 4th of July, I'm not exaggerating. It was almost 200 yards of beach of personal stuff at 5:30 in the morning. I got the pictures on my phone. And I felt bad for the Sea Turtle lady because she was actually walking up and telling these guests, like, hey, guys, you see them waiting at the toe of the dome? Like, you wait for the guests.
Yeah.
And, so, my question is kind of, is there any way to make it fair in that regards? As, going big on what's good for the gander is good for the goose.
Mm-hmm.
And, us following the rules, is there any kind of measure possibly to put in to hold
Yep, very good question. I don't even know or not, but we got 2 new code enforcement officers this year. We have learned through being out there that what creates compliant behavior is code enforcement and law enforcement presence on the beach. And so this year in our budget, I have 8 new code enforcement officers coming on and 4 new beach ambassadors coming on. So we're going to have very good coverage on the beach, and one of the goals will be to be out there early in the morning to let people know. So, will it be, hold up, no, you can't go? It's going to be education. And also part of that beach etiquette will be even though that is an ordinance, it'll be more of an education type thing for the general public. Because, in our encounters with the general public, 75% of the times they are truly ignorant of the code or what is proper beach etiquette. And once they do know about it, now, do I think this is going to completely change their behavior and they're going to say, oh gosh, we can't go down before the sea turtle lady goes by? No, because they paid a bunch of money to come here and they're going to get try to get what they want. But I think it will stem a lot of it. Plus, we'll have more officers on the beach. We'll be able to help change behavior by giving a financial motivation. And then the word spreads. It's just like our Leave No Trace program. As we started collecting those items at night using our beach maintenance crew as opposed to the tagging for 24 hours and then removing, it doesn't take long for that word to spread down the beach. Just from neighbor to neighbor that, hey, you can't leave your stuff out at night. We did collect a lot of stuff this year, but as in each year, we kind of see it slowing down towards the end of the year or middle of the year, people start getting the word out. Another thing is we're going to press hard on our bed tax collectors to get this information in the units. Even though we already have verbiage contained in our bed tax collection process that they're supposed to do this, we've discovered that it's not as prominent as it could be. So that's another initiative with marketing and PR department is to get the friendly. We as TDC try to make everybody feel happy and green flags and sunshine. And but those also work better. If you just have a bold type, don't go on the beach before 7 p.m. or 7 a.m. that doesn't work. If you have a nice placard, with a turtle, and people get the idea of why you're not supposed to be on the beach, then it's more effective. So we're going to work more on education, more on presence, and we hope that that'll, turn some of that tide. We'll see how it works next year. But I think with the increase of officers, you'll see more compliant behavior amongst all the visitors to the beach.
That's awesome, yeah, because we're more than happy to accommodate, but when it gets to the point where it's 200 yards straight, then I guess start forming a lynch mob and
Yeah.
a little uncomfortable for me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's also a few other people that are doing some initiatives, separate from us. There's Friends of South Walton Turtle that'll be out on the beach. They've partnered up with, didn't I see Faith? Faith come in? Yeah. Partnered up with a new program that's kind of a grassroots beach ambassador program. And so once again, I believe educating people in a nice way is more effective, than punitive damage, or hard. You can't do that. This is why you don't do that. So, like I say, we got some more signage, like I say, coming up at our beach accesses that people will see. And we hope that all that works on everybody and everybody is, like I say, happy on the beach.
And again, thank you to the Sea Turtle Watch Committee.
Yeah.
It's been great this year. So.
A couple things I want to ask this guy. That piece of property that it shows on the plat that runs all the way down, that's not county owned, that's just an easement.
That's an easement across Vizcaya property.
So what does the easement mean? It's just an easement, but you're not allowed to use it?
No, it gives us, the original purpose was for access and utilities. It's one of the former government lot easements. Back in the 20s and 30s, federal government had a bunch of land they didn't need anymore, so they subdivided it into typically 1.25 acre lots. And since they weren't a developer, they didn't put in roadways or utility ways. And what they did is they put 33-foot easements, typically on the adjoining sides of each property and then on the north side of the property. And so as that land was bought, parceled together, and replatted, those government easements, since they're on patent deeds, they don't go away. You can't get rid of them. And that's how we ended up with it. But since it is an easement, we don't have all the rights that we normally have on a piece of property we own. Right.
I didn't quite understand that. I seen it on the plat, but I just did not quite understand that.
Right.
Now, another thing, vendors, do y'all have a certain, is there not a certain space that you're supposed to space out your chairs? I mean, in between cells?
Once again, it's the code has ambiguous language in it. What it says is it says leave aisle spaces for access to the water, and it says leave space for the general public. So it doesn't define what that space is, or what the width of those aisles are, or what the frequency of those aisles are. And then,
The only reason I asked that is I was at the beach and I noticed that the vendor had spaced them out.
Mhm.
So we were able to sit in that space, which
Yep.
we were fine with. It was okay. We could get all that.
that's an excellent self-regulating practice.
Right, okay. The other thing I wanted to ask what Brian was talking about, if I'm a homeowner and I own Gulfront property, and I want to call Brian and say, hey, I want to rent some chairs, and I want them in front of my house, I'm not allowed to do that?
Depends on your relationship to the beach. If you own to the main high water line, most certainly. You can call them up and they can bring chairs to you all day long. If your property line stops at the toe of the dune or the top of the dune, and the beach in front of your house is public, then there has to be a vendor zone there for him to be a delivery vendor to bring.
And that's what happens on Wall Street, so that's why.
Correct. Wall Street.
How far does that go down? I mean, when you come off of Wall Street,
Well, Wall Street also has a portion of public-owned beach that I call a fractional township. As our beach crests down towards the southeast, you end up with township tops. Okay, township is, a measure of land that didn't get sold, and it wasn't at the toe of the dune. Sometimes it's at the toe of the dune, sometimes it's halfway down, sometimes it just depends on where it's at. It's just a small sliver. But we own one of those just to the east of Wall Street. Okay, Wall Street's a little bit different because Wall Street's a road right-of-way. It was a former government easement that was granted to the county, and it turned into a road right-of-way that runs right down onto the beach. And then just to the east of that, in front of that property, there's probably 3 or 4 lots that own about 20 feet south of the toe of the dune, and then we own the property. So there's a lot of beach there, and that's why it's subdivided in the way it is.
so if you put the chairs in the 20 feet and they kept them in the 20 feet, is he allowed to do that?
That would be on their property. If it's up near the toe of the dune, I mean, we go by the property appraiser's website. We all know that the lines on there tend to have, depending on where you are, they're a little bit shifted off to the east. But, we're not going to get down there and haggle over a line in the sand. But, if you've made good faith to be on their property, you probably won't get any action out of us. If there's, pushing of the limits, then.
Well, no, I'm just saying, and one more thing, on the beach etiquette, all of those are really good points. I like the clothespin idea, the rubber bands, I don't know anything about them, but, I think that do most people look online? When they look online, if we had that where they could check, hit it and say, yes, I read it, I understand it, and, it's just another way to get them to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like reading that thing at the end of the thing. Yeah, okay, I read it,
Yeah, I mean,
I not read it before and found out that it didn't make you good.
right. Rental agreements have them in it. They have them, somewhere in the property they're supposed to. But you've seen the typical notice on the back of the door. Things you're supposed to do when you're staying at that rental unit. Right. So we're looking at something that's more, like I say, educational, friendly, and effective.
Well, on,
Yeah.
on that note, I'm Matt McGarrett with Southport and Myrtle Watch. I did this year get, Hilton is playing like a PSA with leave no trace policy in all their hotel rooms on one of the channels. I also got the movie theater Grand Boulevard to play the PSAs before the movie.
Awesome.
So there's been some things that I've been working on, so it's helped. And I'm trying to reach out to more places that jump on board and kind of do the same thing. But also I wanted to tell the vendors, like, for the most part this year, the vendors are super awesome. I got all the complaints this year sent to me. I handled all the complaints this year for Southport Turtle Watch. Really, man, everyone was really polite, worked with me, had a good relationship. There's just a handful of vendors that are kind of the ones kind of repeating over and over and over. I think a lot of the vendors taking a bad rap from really dealing with this year. You guys are pretty cool, worked with me, got a good relationship. I'd say the few complaints I had this year was either my guys didn't, or they saw the turtle lady walk by, and we're not using that program anymore, or my guy doesn't have his cell phone, or he didn't get the text. Please, we really worked hard on this texting program, and it's done 7 days a week by the area coordinators, and I think it's helped. So if every vendor could just please make sure, the guys get in the habit of, they see that routine of the lady walk by, and it's easy for them to go, I know that's her, I saw her yesterday, and I saw the day before. Well, also as the year changes, the time we start to change. The sun comes up later, and I run into it where it's, oh man, I thought she walked by at 6:15 every day. No, man, now she's walking by at 6:20. We start 5 minutes later. And if you're following the texting program, it literally will never be an issue. There may have only been a handful of times where we were running super late, and probably no one probably had set up at 7. Everyone probably got set up before 7 all year long. Maybe there was an incident I didn't know about. But we really did work hard to keep you guys on the beach as early as possible. And then the other issue was really just a few vendors who just said, basically, I'm setting up. And then the other vendors are feeling pressure, and they run down, and I need to discuss with them. They're like, man, I had to do what I had to do. And I understand it, and you just get all the vendors on board. It's really a simple process. Text comes through, set up. I think most people could agree it's within a very reasonable time. That's really it. I mainly want to say thanks, and want the vendors who have reached out to me and work with me in next season to make it better and make it run smooth. And if anyone has any questions for me about anything, ask me now.
Yeah. Your contact info is in our preseason book, right, Matt?
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of you have that. You can find it. Of course, they're on the web as well.
There are turtle men, it's not all ladies. Yeah. So sometimes vendors, the man will walk by, so don't always expect a woman.
Did you get that?
Yeah.
Yes, sir, Philip.
Philip Poundstone, right here. Just in light of the discussion that I think all of us would agree is a pretty positive year, that we all try really hard. Can you give us an idea of what's kind of coming down the pipe potentially for future changes?
Well, like I said, we're going to take input from this meeting, the next meeting, and then the meeting on the 21st, which will deal with more just beach-related issues. The past 2 years, we have asked for consideration for a couple items. Paragraph D8, storage at the toe of the dune. And the reason that, we would like to change storage at the toe of the dune is because while it is convenient for the vendors, we then have trouble with everybody else that wants to store their equipment at the toe of the dune, the public. And where that usually ends up is at the beach access points. And so our beach accesses get very, very crowded with gear. And then the, weekly visitor, believe it or not, most of the gear they use is disposable. And we don't know, most time we can tell if it's no longer being used. But a lot of times we don't know, and we can't distinguish. And so the real reason is that the beaches get very cluttered. And so that's the reason why we would like to change the storage at the toe of the dune clause. The other one is a beach vendor management plan, where regional beach accesses would be have some form of beach vendor management plan that could be as simple as a land lease. In other words, vendor highest bidder for that piece of land, they get the rights to vend within certain, stipulations that we set. In other words, there won't be a free-for-all. They set up chairs all the way across it. The main components of it are that they don't set up equipment until it's used. They take it down when it's not being used. They have a tenant on duty. They have a storage box. They leave a certain amount of room for the general public. So they basically treat it as a resort community that it also functions as a public beach where people want to come that might not want to rent equipment. The other side of that is a true RFP for services where Walton County puts out a request for proposal for a vendor to provide the services. The county, takes the revenue and pays the vendor a fee based on the contract amount. Or there could be some forms of that. The ways we would keep it from being a monopoly is we would restrict vendors from having more than one regional beach access. Those plans won't work that well on a neighborhood beach access because of the size of them and because of the paragraph D8. As you know, in Seagrove, Sea Island area, we have a lot of public beach and a lot of vendor zones that are all in front of private property. And because those move back and forth, I wouldn't expect anybody to be able to put a price on it where they can make any kind of money and not be frustrated. So, but once again, those are things that we will compile along with what the information we're taking here, and they will go through the Tourist Development Council, where they will be discussed, pared down, paired up, omitted altogether. Then they'll go to the BCC, who will then make the final decision on. We think that these are good ideas that will make it all that will make it better for all concerned. Or they'll say, Brian, right now we think that the beaches are in an okay condition, or the beach vendor management is in okay condition, and we're not going to adopt any changes this year. So highly encourage everybody to be here on the 21st. As well as at the subsequent TDC meeting on the 4th, October 4th, and then more than likely it will come before the BCC on October 11th, possibly the next or the 4th Tuesday of that month, which is?
The 11th is 4 o'clock here.
Yeah, and then what's the next one? The 20th? 25th? Yeah. So, but all those will be, on the agendas. They'll be on our website. They'll be put out by our PR department through our Connections newsletter. We will also send it all to the vendors via our Simple View database system. All the vendors receive information from us.
That's in addition from potentially the no more storage of the toes lagoon, as well as the RFP. Is there going to be any kind of proposals potentially for reducing those chairs?
Well, the problem is how do you do that? I mean, we feel like that's an item that the vendor needs to self-regulate. I mean, I'll be honest with you, the way you vend by the week or by the day from 7 to 5, there's a somewhat valid excuse for a chair being empty at any given time during the day. That's why, once again, I use the word self-regulation. And, when I get a chance to speak with vendors one-on-one, I always encourage that because if you don't self-regulate, there's a chance that they'll be regulated off the beach. I mean, like I say, things I think are getting better from when I got here 2.5 years ago. But we're going to have the prediction is more people here. Obviously, the other issues associated with the beach, customary use, private property versus public property. Our new ordinance change of signs and ropes, prohibited from the beach. All that creates tension and manifests itself in the issues going on at Vizcaya. Can't blame a guy for protecting his private property. Don't know if he's doing it the right way, but he's got his reasons, and other people have their reasons why they don't want people on the beach that they have title to. But I think as an industry, it would benefit yourselves to, do what I call self-regulation. If you don't have the chairs rented that day, and I don't know how you figure that out, what kind of management system you use. I know we have different caliber of vendors. Some of them, are very well organized, and some of them, are small, very small companies. One guy and 10 chairs and 5 umbrellas, and they truly, 7 to 5 during the day, and they rent them all week. And but I'm hoping that as we go through this next year, that the vendors figure out how to not do that. If it's attendant visiting the beach more times during the day, with smartphones and different applications, it's pretty easy to know if your vendor is going to be your vendee, your rentee is going to be using that chair that day. And when they're done, just hey, text rent gear here, I'm done, and then your guy comes and gets the chair. Yep. One more. Oh.
Somebody ever got anything?
You won't speak either? Go ahead.
Norman Rouse. So initially last year when you brought up the proposal as far as storing, like not storing chairs up at the toe of the dune, it was before I had run delivery service. I never thought that it was a big deal. Anybody knows me, who knows I love to weight lift, work out, etc. Well, part of that proposal that I do ask that you take into consideration is actually the health and safety of the beach vendor, in that these chairs weigh anywhere from 22 to 24 pounds apiece. So running efficiently, you're running 4 chairs up and down the boardwalk, which exposes them to injury very, very easily.
Yes, sir.
Doing that day in and day out, and the wear and tear on that individual's body. So as far as that proposal is concerned, I do urge that, after doing it and initially trying to do that practice myself, that it is something you take into consideration.
Yeah.
Because that really could get some guys hurt.
Yeah, like I say, I don't do it because I'm trying to punish or we don't ask for consideration of that because we're trying to punish the vendors. What I do is I look at the original intent of that section of the ordinance. Okay, it was geared towards the delivery vendor, and the original intent of the delivery vendor was to bring equipment to a person's house that they could use, and they would set up and tear down each day. Not the vendor showing up at 7 o'clock in the morning and coming back at 5 in the afternoon. Now, we've morphed into that because in Walton County, people like to pay for services. And, if they can, pay $250 or $300 a week, and all they got to do is walk down and sit in a chair for as long as they want and get up and walk away from it, and they think that's a fair deal, that's how we got where we are. So, in turn, I'd ask you, the vendor, if you got that thing rented for, the whole week, but your person's only there, say, for, Sunday through Monday or Saturday through Monday, then don't leave it down there waiting for the next week. You know what I mean? And if they're not going to be there if there was a way to manage that particular rentee with that particular set, some of the, as we go around, we ask people. I'm constantly inquiring as to why this behavior happens. And so I discover that, I rent it during the week, so I got to set it out every day because if I don't, I got to give them money back. Well, why didn't they use it every day? Well, because they went up, to somewhere else, to the Springs, or they went to the, outlet mall for the day, and they just weren't going to use it that day. So if there was a way that y'all could, figure that out, that would solve the ghost sets. If you could way to figure out if they're going to be there all week or not all week, or just some way to minimize the number of sets stacked up at the toe of the dune. Once again, I'm going back to self-regulation, because the simple fact is 167 permits. I have no idea of how many chairs that is exactly, but as I've made my rounds on the beach, I increasingly towards the end of the year would see more and more stacks of chairs, and especially after what we call the vending season. Most schools start now second week in August. By the first week in August, people are not. The families aren't coming anymore. And that should be a time that you start taking equipment off the beach. Now, I know Labor Day comes up at the end of or August, and, you know, once again, it's lugging equipment off, lugging it back on. But those are areas where the vendor could definitely, you know, help out the cause.
As far as I was referencing was every single day running them up and down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, now we pull our stuff at the end of the week.
Right.
After the rental is done, but
Mhm.
if we were doing initially every single day, taking chairs on and off the beach.
Yeah.
Several times, I almost,
Yeah.
doing a really funny YouTube video out there somewhere.
Yeah. You know, maybe it's, you know, community storage boxes that are equal to the specific place vendor that could be strategically placed, you know, where multiple vendors could use a box. And that would get all the equipment stored in one place instead of multiple, you know, caches of equipment up and down the beach. But once again, those are things that we'll hash out as we go along. And that's why I encourage you, these meetings are, you know, for us to take input, the decisions and the true discussion, debate is made at the TDC meetings and at the BCC meetings, where those are the TDC is an advisory council to the BCC. BCC is the final decision maker on policy. So I encourage you to be those. Get up, speak effectively. You know, don't get into arguments and all that. Just the way I say it, come with a problem, come with a solution. Remove as much emotion out of it as you can, and ask for consideration, not mandate change. Yes, sir.
Does the county get any money back from the vendors for setting up on the private beach?
We get the permit fees is the money that we get for them setting up on any of the beaches.
How much would that be?
First permit's $500. Any subsequent specific place permit is $50. If you have to get a delivery, if some of them are delivery permitted vendors, that's $500 as well. So you can get your first delivery permit and your first specific place permit, $1,000. Each one after that's $50. Yes, sir.
I'm Ted Misseldine. You keep talking about self-regulation, and last year we looked at the data that came in. You said roughly this year the same number of vendor contacts from code enforcement as last year. When we looked at the numbers last year, it seemed that there were some repeat offenders. You're talking about self-regulation, and there's been the talk about vendors forming a trade-type organization. How can we regulate other vendors when TDC, code enforcement, is still having the same problems with the same vendors year after year?
Good, very good question. As everybody knows, I'm a big advocate of the industry association. So the way you do it is you develop an industry association, you adopt your own standards, okay? And those are standards that of how you all agree that you're going to work to make your industry better. And then you petition the county to make it a requirement to be a member of this association in order to be a permitted vendor on the beach. So that's the quick, down and dirty way to do it. Now, is that going to be easy? I don't know. But the BCC is interested in creating harmony on this beach, and I think that they would be, you know, in consideration of an industry creating an association that makes everybody play by what I would consider a level playing field. Now, the repeat offenders that we have, there is a provision in the ordinance that if they have multiple offenses, that there can be administrative action to either revoke a permit or deny a permit. So far, we haven't gotten to that far yet, but I could see that in the near future or the next season, if we have what I call rogue vendors, that we might see some of that type of action. Because with the implementation of 8 new code enforcement officers, that'll give us, 6 new code enforcement officers, gives us 10 total, plus Jeff. They're expecting, you know, us to help create the harmony on the beach. And I think there's committed, I mean, by adding that amount of people and the extra resources that go with it, trucks, you know, computers, equipment, and all that, that they are committed to making a safe, harmonious beach. Got one back here. All right.
Fred Bueller. I'm a resident of Seagrove, so I'm talking as a private citizen. Seems like a lot of these problems are enforcement-related issues. And I think you're grossly understaffed to try to do the job you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think you should have a lot more. How many?
We're getting 6. I said 8.
How many accesses is there? How many?
62 Gulf and Bay accesses.
So you're gonna have 10 people, so,
Mhm.
and I'm sure all 10 of those don't work at the same time. So
No, sir. We'll have good coverage every day of the week from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m.
7 days a week.
Yes, sir.
Well, good coverage is maybe 5 of those people out at any one point in time.
Yeah, Jeff, our coverage is 3 people from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Two come out at 5 a.m. and then the other 2 come out at 2. So from, basically you have an overlap, an hour and a half in the middle of the day plus the supervisor. So the supervisor's a floater, so
So-
you get 3 most of the day.
It still seems like you're grossly understaffed. I mean, we have 26 miles of beaches.
Yes, sir. And you know, a portion of that's state park where, you know, we don't have as much congestion and really, you know, enforcement rights, so to speak.
I'm involved with this group of citizens that's trying to do
Yes, sir.
beach ambassador duties. But, there's very limited what a volunteer can do on
Right.
the beach. And we're gonna need your help with anything that's serious. And I'm concerned about how easy it'll be to get anybody down on a particular spot on the beach at
Okay.
any point in time.
Well, that's a good question.
Put hundreds of ambassadors out there, but if we can't get one of you guys there
Mm-hmm.
to do something about a gross violation, it's gonna be we're gonna get frustrated fast. Because, we need we need the authority invested in the TDC, code enforcement people to get things fixed. So
Mhm.
I think, I commend you for increasing the staff, but I don't know, I spend a lot of time down at the beach.
Mhm.
I do not see you guys very frequently when I'm down at the beach. So, just.
Okay. Well, in addition to the code enforcement officers, we're also getting 2 full-time beach ambassadors and 2 part-time beach ambassadors. The beach ambassadors will work under, you know, the season, so we'll have 5 beach ambassadors out there to help supplement and enforce. Once again, you know, we do believe compliant behavior is achieved by presence on the beach. We've experienced it, every day. You know, glass, dogs.
But the person is the way you're gonna get tourists to pay attention. Like I said, I used to rent houses here before I bought here,
Mm-hmm.
and you get a stack like this from the rental agents when you check in. Nobody is gonna be able to go through all that. Nobody wants
Right,
to go
no.
through all that stuff. It's really gonna be the individual person walking by and saying, that hole that you just built,
Mm-hmm.
you can drive a tank in, needs to be filled before you go home. Stuff
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
So, I think you can never have too many people walking the beach.
Right.
I hope
Well,
it's 20 next year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would anticipate that we'll have more, depending on how this next season goes, with the amount of people we have and the change that we get, will be how, if we get more resources the next year or not. The other thing we have to balance is even though our season is stretched out some, from March to October, we still have, a fairly, lax period of time in the winter. And so, the BCC has to, balance that. We can't just have people standing around. We'll focus our efforts on other areas of the ordinance and work on educational items and stuff like that. But, we go from, 5 to 10. right now, that's, doubling our forces, tripling our beach ambassador, quadrupling beach ambassadors, and then with your group,
Full-time position.
yeah, all the code enforcement is full-time positions.
Okay, so, you ever consider something like what the lifeguards do, and gear up with a lot more people during the summer? And letting those people
Well,
do something else during the rest of the year?
we do, and that'll be with beach ambassadors. The reason we don't do it with beach code enforcement is because they have to be certified by a Florida Association of Code Enforcement. It's part of our deal. It's a professional position that not only has to abide within the Walton County Municipal Code, but we're also governed by Florida Statute 162. It takes a lot of training, so it's not necessarily a part-time position. I know that there's been some talk of, well, you could use law enforcement people to do that in the summer season. Well, that sounds good on the surface, but then there's not all those people out there looking for that job. If you're retired, a few people want to get back in the workforce, but it's not like I want to go out there every day. And riding down the beach may sound like fun, but every person they encounter, they're telling them they're doing wrong, and pretty much, and it's not always a good encounter. So.
Well, I think there's a lot of changes going on in the next year, so we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes.
Yep.
The ambiguous rules that you had mentioned a couple of,
Mm-hmm.
are we working on getting rid of the ambiguous?
We are. Yeah, every year we have small language changes that we try to get adopted, and they all go towards.
The spacing between sets seems like fairly easy.
It is. It is. Spacing between sets. The other one is reasonable distance from the water's edge. What's reasonable to you is obviously different than me, so we would like to adopt some language in that. So we'll have all that coming together as items to be considered by the BCC.
Okay, that's in the works this year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And the bad vendors, a couple people have mentioned the bad vendors.
Mm-hmm.
Is there going to be something done differently to try to identify those bad vendors?
Well, we have, like I say, we adopted this new access-based database system that helps us, before we were doing everything with Excel spreadsheets and all that. This is, quick, on-the-fly identification. We can go back as far as we've, started keeping records within that. So what that does, it helps us to identify multiple violations. And, this year, we didn't have anybody get past 4, Jeff? Fourth, multiple violations for the same offense by the same vendor.
I think we've got 2 or 3 that's been written that are 4 citations.
Yeah.
Yeah, the problem with that is you guys have to see, I know for sure there's a reason that, because, and it's not your fault, the statute states it, you physically have to see the violation.
Yeah, we have to observe the violation.
Yeah, where I'm getting these texts every day from the walkers who cover every inch of the beach in the
Yeah.
whole area.
It's the same ones day after.
And then I,
We're not talking about complaint. I know we're not talking about complaints. We're talking about written citations.
well, that's what I'm saying, is that you got 4, but there's obviously, they are actually.
Yep.
Man,
Yep.
But
Yep.
that's fine, go ahead.
So anyway, yes, like I say, I do believe the BCC's commitment is to making the code enforcement department have the proper authority, proper resources to make change for the better.
I agree with your concept of having self-regulated vendors. I'm afraid, though, the ghost chairs is a huge problem.
Mhm.
I get texts every day from.
Right.
I'm in a group on Facebook that we discuss these things every day. There's a huge pushback on the ghost chairs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the BCC and the TDC needs to try to come up with a plan. I have talked to you in the past about some ideas,
Mm-hmm.
maybe assigning a vendor to a.
Right.
access.
That's what we call our beach vendor management plan.
Yeah, and try to get, get a vendor that really knows the area, and even the residents who live there to really know the vendor. There's a lot of benefits, because you see, most of these vendors are really nice guys.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to know them, it's very easy to resolve things.
quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
I think it's, that a lot of these vendors could actually simplify their business if they didn't have to deliver chairs to the whole range of beach, where they were assigned maybe 2 or 3 or 4 consecutive accesses. They could have a person down there all day long,
Mm-hmm.
handling complaints and new chairs and getting rid of chairs abandoned. There's some ideas that would allow those chairs to be reduced anyway. And I think the TDC ought to be trying to initiate that, not waiting for the vendors.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, like I say, a couple things is, under a beach vendor management plan, we have all those items addressed. Now, Walton County is pro small businessman. The vendors fall into that category. And so while it sounds easy to do without assigning beaches, it's not. It's because of the business practice that they rent by, which I explained earlier. If they charge a rentee for the week, then they are obligated to set that chair up. And so what I meant by self-regulation is if there was a way to manage each particular piece of equipment associated with a rentee. In other words, if the rentee could simply text, I'm not using this equipment today, there's no reason to set it out. Plus, I don't want money back for it. That's another reason, too, is that people that come here and pay for services often try to get that fee reduced through complaints, through I'm not going to use it, give me a deduct, and stuff like that. And so, as business plans are set forth at the first of the year, so right now the culture we have is not necessarily geared towards making it perfect for the guy that's not renting a chair. It's making it perfect for the guy that is renting the chair. And I guess that's what we got to change. And that's why I keep touting the self-regulation under the, consequence of, you might end up getting regulated off the beach, and then you don't have, revenue generation capability at all. But once again, the way to make change on any of this is to be vocal at the BCC meeting, where these ideas will be presented, debated, and then decided on.
There's a lot of, I think that's important. That's a message we've got to get out to
Mm-hmm.
frustrated people who live around.
Yeah. Well, another thing I wanted to encourage, too, is that, as you're walking down the beach, say you're walking in front of, let's just say, Legendary, and you see go sets. Well, they're not necessarily go sets. Because that's a specific place permitted vendor. They're allowed to set up, they could set up as many empty chairs as they want because it's, the beach that's controlled by the condominium. And so as we process these complaints on go sets, we investigate them. We're not dispatched, so to speak, but it goes to the next available officer, and then on his rounds he checks it out. And so the next day, if he's down there, or maybe even later that day, he might make it by that particular area. And a lot of times the go set complaints were actually on specific place permitted vendors. And therefore, it's really not a valid complaint. See what I'm saying?
But are those sets allowed? There's no rules against those sets.
Actually, on a public beach, under the clause of there's no active vending. In other words, a go set would be also synonymous with a speculative set. So that would be active vending. But on a specific place permitted area, then that person sets up as he has agreed to with the property owner. And so in that case, he might say, I want 5 rows of 20 chairs because I have 100 people in my unit or in my condominium complex. They may not use them all day. That unit may not be rented that day. But
the private ones are a completely different issue than the public ones.
well, that's what I'm saying, though. A lot of the complaints that we investigate are actually on specific place permitted vendor areas.
See them on public spots, inside vendor zones.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Sitting behind an empty chair.
Yeah, I agree.
Those are the issues that you can address.
Brian, can I elaborate on that?
Yeah.
One thing, just because it's a public access or a vendor zone, and it's the complaint comes in as a go set, and we investigate that go set as the complaint is, a lot of times what we find is that it's a vendor who's got a contract on a house 3 or 4 streets in to provide service for that homeowner for the year. And they've chosen Gulfview Heights, for example, as the location where they want their chair. So they're not a site-specific permit. They're not a resort. They're a homeowner that's inland, that's not on the beach, that's paying a yearly rental for that set of chairs. So it looks like a speculative set because they've paid the company to set it up for 4 months or however long it is. The people that's renting that house this week may not be here today. They may be going to Pier Park or to Destin or got sunburn on Sunday and Monday, don't come to the beach on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or whatever happens. But the set's paid for, even though it's on a public access, nobody's sitting in it, which creates, it makes it look like a go set, but realistically, it's rented, it's paid for, and which it goes back to what Brian was mentioning a while ago, something that says you can only put it there if somebody's with it for the day, not put it there for the week and use it 2 days in the week.
Yeah.
How do you stop an empty chair from sitting there all day long? I mean, that's what we're all.
Yeah, I agree. This fellow's been waiting. Yes, sir.
Bill Bell Jr., White Diamond Beach Service. I would just like you guys as code enforcement to explain to me the developments that have happened in 2016 with private neighborhood beach signs.
Okay. As the beaches got more congested, we have a lot of properties that have that own down to the mean high water line. That line is it's a pretty long definition, but basically it's a vertical measurement of above 0 sea level. Strike a horizontal line where that hits the beach. That's a mean high water line data point. You do that and frequency down the beach, and you end up with a line. And it varies. When I say varies, it varies in distance from the water's edge as you go down the beach. It varies with time, and it varies with, the main contributor to that is the elevation of the flat sandy portion of the beach. As that moves up and down with beach erosion, that line also goes further up towards the toe of the dune. So as we've become more congested, and as we've got new owners into our area, they've been exercising their private property rights. And one of the ways you do that is you mark your property boundaries. Florida Statute 810 has specifics on how that's done. The Sheriff's Office issued a SOP on how they would enforce trespassing rights. They've since rescinded that based on a customary use seeking ideas by the county. But in a nutshell, it's private property residents exercising their right to preserve their private property rights. So that's where the posts, ropes, and fences started appearing on the beach. Another cause of that is less than desirable behavior by visitors to the beach. And then just recently, the county passed an ordinance, Section 2255. There's a revision to an ordinance that prohibits posts, ropes, and fences on the beach any time of the day. It's challenged in court right now. When the ordinance was changed, we gave a certain amount of time for people to comply. We got about a 50% compliance rate with that. We've disposed of about 30 cases, 28 cases, where people, understood and, complied. We have some that have received tickets and paid them, and some that are waiting to challenge them in court, in civil court. So it all goes back to customary use and private property versus public beach access issues that are right now front and center on Walton County beaches. So did I answer your question, or did I give enough?
People we work at is concerned with it. They're one of the ones that will probably challenge it in civil court.
Yeah.
That's beyond me, though.
Okay. So you're a vendor that's been asked to set up signs?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I would let the private property owner fight that battle, not you, but that's just my personal opinion. I'm not a lawyer, I'm disclaiming.
You do need to bring up a point though, if a vendor is taking them out on the beach, and I see him take them out on the beach, and he is the one causing a violation, you will be the one that receives the citation. Just that y'all understand that.
Mhm.
It's just like if you borrow a boss's car and you drive 100 on the highway, you get a ticket about the ball game.
Yes, sir, Mr. Drake.
The signs are permitted at the total dune and at the edge of the vegetation line.
That is correct. That is, definition of the beach is the flat sandy portion of the beach between the toe of the dune or line of permanent vegetation and the water's edge. So, yes, sir, you are correct. Signs are allowed at the toe of the dune.
But they have to be taken in line.
No, ma'am. DEP has require certain what they call blanket permits on signs of that kind, monopole sign, appropriate size head at the toe of the dune. Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure, Brian, that I understand the process of these changes. So there will be a meeting, a TDC meeting on the 21st, correct?
No, sir, there'll be another public meeting like this called postseason vending meeting on the 13th at 9 a.m. And then there will be an open forum meeting, public workshop to discuss all beach operation activities on the 21st at 5 p.m. Okay, and then all that information, all this input that we've taken today in the next two meetings will be compiled with our end of year summary. And then that will be taken to the TDC on October 4th at our regular bi-monthly meeting. They start at 9 a.m. It'll be in this room right here, where it will be hashed out, will be presented, discussed, pared down, paired up, maybe omitted, some things wholesale, and then whatever comes out of that meeting will go forward to the BCC, more than likely on the 11th and the 25th, or the 25th. We'd like to take care of business that concerns the South down here at the first meeting of the month, which is the second Tuesday of the month. However, there are some occasions where we do it. The issue is the short time difference between the 4th and the 11th.
So my request as a vendor is, you mentioned the beach vendor management plan or RFP process, and it's kind of can we see those specific details?
Yes. When they go to the TDC, all the specific details will be included in a package.
If we see it before then, and I'll just tell you my point is that if we see it for the first time on the 4th, that's when it gets voted on. That's whether it's presented to the BCC or not. We send them out to the TDC a week in advance with their agenda package, and so we'll send them out at the same time. And that'll outline everything.
Completely have what the recommendations that we're asking for consideration are, and it'll have specific details about it and all.
And again, that's just so we have time to prepare and construct.
Correct. Oh, yeah, I agree. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I am Matt Houston. I'm actually from Nashville, and I'm the CEO of Beachy. We are a mobile platform that facilitates logistics and commerce between beach service providers and beachgoers. That's our tagline. So a lot of the issues that we're seeing here are really validation of pain point for the reasons we started our business. So not this as a sales pitch, but more as I would implore you to explore technology as the solution to a lot of these pain points, because we sit here and we nudge each other and giggle because the pain points you guys are experiencing, which are very real and polarizing, and we aren't taking a stance on any of it, but they are solved very simply using technology that exists already.
Okay, any more comments, questions? I appreciate everybody's time. Encourage you to come to the meeting on the 21st, where there'll be more input on everything beach, and then highly encourage you to attend the TDC and the BCC meetings. Got any questions in between then, give me a call, shoot me an email. If you don't have my information, my cards are right here. And of course, it's also on our website. Appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Y'all looking for us?
Yeah, man. See you, buddy. How's married life? You married yet? Not yet? No, it's not, buddy. No, this is a good time.